Hi, I'm Steelfur, and this is Steelfur Speaks, weekly flesh and blood podcasty thing where we talk about the state of the game and everything that's been going on and those kinds of things. Apologies, this episode is a bit later than I would like it. This week it's supposed to go out at 7 p.m. UK time. I'm just running a small bit behind because it was a bank holiday in the UK this weekend. And that means, for those of you who aren't from the UK, basically it's a national holiday. We have, I think, 12 of them a year, maybe 13, where everyone takes the day off work and your work has to give you the day off and works are closed. Europeans will be familiar with them. The US probably isn't, but sorry, guys. We just like to take a lot of time off. So what is happening this week? So obviously we've got the start of Road to Tokyo, the pre-constructed decks happening in Japan, which is exciting. So we've actually seen all of the Blitz decks come out. There's been these fantastic series of Blitz deck tutorials, which are really exciting. Actually, they've got really good videos where the developers are playing against all of the different heroes, you know, in that the three heroes in Mist, and kind of showing you how they play, but with the caveat that they are playing with the Blitz decks, so they don't have any of the Majestics or anything like that. They just have, you know, the staple commons and rares, but that's fine. And those are already on Talishar, so people, including myself, have already been playing multiple games with the cards. And I will say that, like, just from initial impressions, even without Majestics, New feels very strong. Enigma feels very strong. Zen is not feeling so strong to me at the moment, but that's kind of more to do with the fact that he has this he just has this issue with, like, I think his power cards are going to be combo Majestics and they're going to be searchable. And until we get those Majestics, it's not really going to be an accurate representation of his power. So if you look at, like, you know, he's got Key Unleashed, which is good. That's power card. You know, you could run Rainbow of those and just fetch them with his ability. But, like, you know, aside from that, you're really just looking at not a lot of power in his commons and rares. You know, these form the basis of how he gets Crouching Tigers, but the Majestics with combo are going to be the way that he, you know, actually realizes the power of the Crouching Tigers, right? So, I mean, we've already seen a lot of those Dynasty Majestics are being power cards that combo with Crouching Tigers. I expect to see more of that from the set. Whereas it does look like, you know, to an extent, Enigma and New's base commons are more powerful. They have a bit more synergy with especially Enigma, with the generic blues like Wild Blue Yonder, Big Blue Sky. You know, so those are there as well. And also just, you know, New's kind of basic power level in terms of, you know, all of these 0 for 3 attacks. Art of Desire Body is amazing, as well as stuff like, you know, Venomous Bite, Hiss, are just really, really strong. So, you know, playing a base of like 9 Hisses plus some Venomous Bites, you know, you're looking at a very, very strong go again base, whereas Zen doesn't really feel like he's arrived at that yet. And also, you know, to add to this, we have had that's Scowling Fleshbag, regular streamer of Fab that I was looking at. But if we, you know, we go to the Discord and we go to the official card reveals, we'll see the last card just spoiled by not by Scowling Fleshbag, by Star City Games, is the first Majestic. And you'll kind of see what I mean in terms of power versus, you know, actual power. I mean, this is Gorgon's Gaze. It's the first Majestic we see specifically for New, and you instantly see straight away, you know, it's 2 cost. You get Slither, which gives your attack go again as an attack reaction. You banish all defending attack action cards on the combat chain, and if a Chi was pitched to play this, you may play the banished cards this combat chain without paying their cost. So, I mean, firstly, you know, just unpack this. You do need a Chi, so it is a mid to late game card that you can get Chi early on, obviously the first time around, but late game you'll have more of it in your deck. You know, that does provide a certain limitation, like you can't just play this at full power. You do have to have some setup, and it's not a blue, so transcending to get a Chi that turn makes this at minimum a 3-card play, and that means, of course, that you have to have an attack to play as well. Also, there is the thing about when you can play this, because of course if you're attacking with stealth cards, the attacks will already be banishing themselves, so you won't be able to banish them with Gorgon's Gaze, so there's a bit of sort of anti-synergy there. But if you do set this up against the right class, it gives you a slither. You can play the slither to give go again on the attack you've just played, and then you're going to banish any attack reactions that were used to defend, and you're going to play them for free. And you can already start to see that in a lot of decks, you're not even thinking about the crazy stuff like Pulverize, but if you're starting to think about just, regular brute cards, like a 2-for-6 that banishes 3 cards, you'd have to worry about Blood Debt, so you just steal one of those, that kind of thing. Suddenly you start to see that this is potentially presenting an extra 2 damage for 6, but it can be added on quite easily on top of other effects, right? So on the basis, this could be a 2-for-6, but it could be so much more. And if you have another slither, you could in fact play this. You could banish multiple attack action cards, right? If we're in a late game scenario where people have to block to keep their life up, this is actually just a game winning card, because you could banish 2 of the cards they've had to block with and then send them against them if you've got another attack with Go Again, or you've created another slither. And a lot of new players that I've seen already on Talishar are arsenaling slithers to set up big turns with them. So, they're not just chucking out slither willy-nilly, they are arsenaling those slithers to make big turns with them. And also, to be fair, I've also seen Zen arsenaling Crouching Tigers to use them next turn rather than just chucking out an extra 1 damage. So I think that's a good strategy for all heroes. It's kind of arsenaling vital cards. Enigma has been playing incredibly well in my testing. I mean, just even with the commons and uncommons, she just makes this huge board, and she just has so much ward, it's really hard to get her life total down. And it does really feel like you're kind of just fatiguing her out of ward abilities. That being said, stuff like Malign with attack reactions, stuff like Shuko, those now cannot be prevented effects are terrifying. And originally I thought Enigma is dead if the prevention effects work on all ward attacks. But now I'm like, if they don't work, then she just wins. So they very much need these cannot be prevented effects, and I think we might start to see more people trying to run them just to be able to tackle Enigma, which I think is quite interesting. So that's my initial impressions. I think things are going well. Then, of course, we had the pro quests that were going on. Kind of similar to last week, though KO came out more in a big way. And I feel like what a lot of people are saying is that Sash is actually proving to be very, very good. It's not like an every matchup deck, but apparently against certain matchups, Sash is putting in tons of work. So it is a bit alarming to see how much that card is working, and also the price of that card now. I know last week we were speculating as to how much that card would be worth, but I mean, it's currently £35 on Card Market, so it's basically carrying the entire price of the box. But there is a bit of an issue. I mean, in the UK, our distributor's not open. They're moving warehouses. So a lot of people have been complaining they can't buy them before the tournament, people who want the card but can't get them, which is kind of creating a little bit of weirdness with the price. And also knock-on effects in terms of are they going to buy it after Warsaw? Sorry, it was a weird accent. Are they going to buy it after Warsaw if KO's still good? Are they going to wait to buy it then? So are the people they pre-ordered with, are they going to cancel those pre-orders? There's lots of questions going on there. Kano also winning. I've had my thoughts about Kano, plenty of thoughts. I just think he's unhealthy for the game. I just think he's not fun. I think the biggest problem for Kano is just he's not fun for the opponent, right? I mean, that's the biggest problem. It's always been the biggest problem. It's fine if you enjoy playing Kano, but it is a 2-player game, and just that feeling of, he flipped the top card from the top deck, or I couldn't kill him before he stacked his deck, now I'm dead, really is emphasized in Kano more than any other hero. And you do get negative play experiences against other heroes, like being stuck in a prism loop is not fun. People are asking the question, are they going to ban ALS or something because the loop isn't fun? They're not saying Prism is overpowered. She's good, but she's counterable. There's plenty of ways to beat Prism. But they are saying this isn't fun, I don't want it in the game. And that's kind of like an interesting decision matrix for the designers of Flesh and Blood, because they obviously want the game to be as competitive as possible. And obviously the way Prism wins certain matchups is by looping and controlling the board. But it has to be fun as well, right? This is a very important metric for the game, right? It can't just be good for competitive players. It has to also be good. Victor also still doing well. Azalea doing well. Bravo starting to come out. I've heard rumbles that Bravo is getting good. I'm not sure what that deck list looks like, but I know he's definitely good into Victor, and I think he's got game into KO. So it seems like some people are starting to lean into Bravo a bit. I've heard that from a few sources, and I also saw him at a few ProQuests I was at. I know some of the players were running Bravo and kind of enjoying that and saying it was quite good into the meta. So we'll see if that continues to develop. Obviously, Kano's still there, still winning where he's good. Also, Kano showed up for the Battle Hardened Richmond. Good on him. I don't know who won in the end. Does it say here? I think Kano actually won the Battle Hardened Richmond. So good for him. Though, again, look, I'm not going to get back into why I don't like Kano, but it's very, very simple. Arcane damage is fine. The ability to just combo your opponent for 40 in one turn, it's just not fine. And the thing is, it's a few things. It's the fact that he can sometimes just get lucky and win. He can sometimes kill you on turn 1, turn 2. That seems unfair. But also, like, he can just, not play the game, just block for the entire game and then win. And to a certain extent, the other thing I don't like about it is that in some matchups, his winning is inevitable because he can stack the deck and then always get to that win, right? And that just feels like it's not what we want. I mean, especially with the new ethos of the game, which is add more variants to make the game more fun. We could summarize as that from heavy hitters and from KO and Victor. Kano just feels like a bit of an aberration. He feels a bit of Fab 1.0, and I think there's a problem with him, which is that while he's winning, he's not getting Living Legend, right, points fast enough. And when he's getting Living Legend points, it feels bad. And when he's not, it feels good, right? So you can look here, right? He's got 383, so he needs to get another 600. But I don't know who's enjoying his road to get 600. Let's put it that way. Anyway, he got 200 this season. I think the ideal thing is if he could just get 200 every season now for the next year or two, and then just go, I think the game would be better off. But otherwise, I think they're genuinely going to have to think about banning him. I think he constricts wizard design a lot. Not talented wizard design, but general wizard design. And I think he asks a lot of questions. Interestingly, just to note that KO has picked up 517 points in one season, which is a candidate for like the highest and fastest climber in the game. And I know there are increased points, but it is looking like if KO keeps winning at the same rate, he will be Living Legend in like the next 3 or 4 months, which is almost as fast as Stavo. So that's a bit of a question, a bit of a problem for LSS, especially since they just released that Armory deck. Armory deck seems to be fine at the moment. I mean, the singles are quite expensive. Some places are sold out. I did a poll, though, and like only 30% of places, I think 100 people responded, and only 30% of stores were sold out. Loads of stores had like 5+ left. I'm hearing reports from Europe. There's loads of stores with like 3 or 4 left. So I'm not actually that worried about supply right now. Even with Sash being as strong as it is, there does seem to still be supply out there. The secondary market seems to be pricing Sash quite highly. And it is, £35 for a Majestic is a lot. But it is, of course, justified the box price of the box, I guess. I think we'll just have to wait and see where that settles down. I genuinely wouldn't mind if Sash works out as being like a £20 card. Because as I said before, I really just want the starter deck to be generous. And if there is 25 or £20 of value in the commons and rares and stuff and the curation, and there's £20 of value in Sash, and another couple of pounds in some of the other exclusive cards, that's actually fine. Like the starter deck will then be worth like £55, and the box will then be worth that. So I think that's kind of good, and we're kind of okay with that. We're going to start to wrap up this week's podcast. I'm now doing all my meal prep on Sundays, and I always talk about food. So now I decided that the answer was to start like showing off a bit of cooking. So that's what I'm going to do. This is a video of me basically caramelizing onions. I'm going to tell you what I meal prepped this week. I basically made a lasagna, and I made chicken katsu curry. And then I also made like a chili noodle thing and some salad. So this is me like caramelizing onions. And I told, as I said last week, I'm trying to insert just a bit more of me into these videos, because I think that gives you a bit more context to how I approach the game, but also how I approach like life. I adore food. I cook every week. I cook almost every night. That's a cat that came to visit. Not cooking. These are the same onions, like an hour and a half later, nice and caramelized in a bit of water. And if you're wondering, like, what am I doing with all these onions? So something you might not know about me, my friends will, but other people might not, is I'm actually intolerant to tomatoes, right? I can't eat them. They do terrible things. They make things swell that shouldn't swell. It's pretty gross. And but thankfully, traditional Italian cooking has the answer to my tomato problem, right? Now, I know you're looking at the bear being like, how can you make, lasagna? How can you make Italian food without tomatoes? And the simple answer is that if you think about things historically, the tomato is not indigenous to Europe. It was only brought to Europe in the 1800s, along with the potato and various other things. And, you can't... It's actually quite a good camera, isn't it? You can't really, you can't really say, well, what was Italian cooking, if you're not using tomatoes, without appreciating just the historical fact that tomatoes weren't in Europe, right? So what did they use before? Well, they had a lot of dry sauces, they had a lot of meats, a lot of stews, the same way the rest of Europe did. But they also made sauces with different bases, cream bases, very common, butter bases, or what I'm more fond of, which is the onion-based dishes. So you've got a traditional onion-based dish called the Genovese, which is a pork-based dish that uses sort of pork mince or like chunks of beef, slow cooked in onion juices. But that kind of gives you the basis for an onion stock, right? So that is what I use. I fry up a load of onions, and then oh, this is shaking a lot. I need to stabilize the camera a bit more next week. My knife is a little broken, but it's also a very sharp knife. I'll crack out the nice Japanese knives I have that I haven't put into the kitchen because I was worried about my housemates wrecking them. I'll start to use those next week. But this is my, I have dyspraxia, so I do have to chop things somewhat slowly. But I get the chopping done. Anyway, so basically I use a very similar basis for the sauce as you would in a bolognese. So I use the, what's it called? The Holy Trinity, which is onion, carrot, and celery, which is a common basis for all bologneses. Very common in Italian cooking to fry all of those. And then I just add in a load more stewed caramelized onions to form the sort of fiber basis for my sauce, right? So most people would just include a chopped tin of tomatoes. I get to include that. Now, the thing you'll notice, because obviously I said before, I've been stewing those onions for about an hour and a half at this point, making sure they're all caramelized, is that essentially I have to do a lot more work, right? A tin of tomatoes is a lot easier, which is why it's a lot more popular, right? Flavor-wise as well, tomatoes are a bit sweeter. You'll see I have to use other stuff to make it up. But this is basically the ingredients. I caramelize onions in a bit of butter, and then I slow cook them in water and sort of the onion's own juices for a couple of hours until they start to dissolve. And then I take them out of the pan and I fry up all this other stuff. So you'll see just chopping up all of this lovely celery. And then just frying it all up, fry up all of that. It starts to get quite good. I'm adding in garlic, adding in mushrooms, grating the garlic. I love this garlic crusher. I mean, it's just so good. Yeah, my kitchen's a bit of a state. My kitchen's always a bit of a state. Like, I live in a house that's 30 years old. It hasn't been renovated in a while, so it does get a bit messy. But I do clean it. There's just some places where there's wood that's stained, unfortunately. And then, of course, we brown up a lovely mince. break it up. Oh, it looks so good even now. This is what I'm having for dinner tonight, by the way. This is when I say I meal prep. I typically make 4 portions of everything. So I've got 4 portions of lasagna, and 2 are in the freezer and 2 are in the fridge. The only thing I would add, which I don't have in here, is I do normally add bacon into my lasagnas and my bologneses, which some people will hate, but I think is great. We mix all the veg in together. It starts to look really good. Lots of herbs like oregano, basil, bay leaves. 100% bay leaves. You can't make a good like stewed thing. And paprika. Paprika helps with the color and also the sweetness, especially if you don't have tomatoes. So you'll see I actually use quite a lot of paprika in there. Bit of salt and pepper. I have these great electric rechargeable salt and pepper grinders that are amazing. And then genuinely just like stew that for a bit. Just get it nice and together. Add some beef stock. Perfect, right? I even changed pans, to be honest, because I thought the saucepan wasn't doing the right job. And then I just left that for a while to nice and stew. And then I made my lasagna. I mean, this is kind of funny. So lasagna this is the thing. So one of the things is I cook very well, but I also cook sort of very rough and ready sometimes. And one of the things that I did in this video, which is hilarious, is I actually put too much on the bottom and then didn't have enough for the rest of the pan. So what you'll see is, and if you're ever intimidated by lasagna sheets are incredibly forgiving. So when you layer these on, and I realized I didn't have enough sauce, I actually decided to take them off. And you'll see in a minute, like I'm putting back in like already used lasagna. Wow, okay, maybe I didn't record that. But there's a point basically in a minute where I take all of this out and relayer it again. And the lasagna sheets are fine because they're not cooked yet. They're still pretty raw. So they were fine to just take out and then relayer. So I redid it all. It got a bit messy, but it turned out. And then, of course, I put cheddar on top. You don't really... Traditional Italians, I don't think you put cheddar on top. You put like Parmesan or something just before the end of cooking. I personally think cheddar goes really well in lasagna. And that is, of course, the end result. Melted, crispy cheddar on the top of a lasagna. Multiple layers. Absolutely delicious. So yeah, that's onion-based lasagna. No need for tomatoes. Still looks very good. The next thing I made was chicken katsu, which unfortunately I didn't record the entire like creation process. I just recorded a bit of the frying at the end, which was a bit upsetting because I was planning on putting this in the video. But you know, this is the finished product. This is the chicken katsu. The recipe for chicken katsu is pretty simple. You basically take a chicken breast or chicken thigh, you cut it in half, you pound it flat. I used a rolling pin. You can use a hammer. If you haven't got any of those things, you can use your hand or the back of a knife. You can use loads of stuff. A good tip is to cover it in like cling film over the top so that your knife and things aren't getting sticky every time you hit it and the chicken isn't sticking to you. Pound it flat, and then you get 3 bowls. Very, very simple. Potato starch or corn flour or flour. Any of the above. Potato starch, traditional, I think, in Japan. You get another bowl with beaten eggs, usually 2 or 3 eggs, depending on how much chicken you have, and another bowl with your panko breadcrumbs. You can use regular breadcrumbs, but panko is like what they sell in the Japanese shops. It's pretty good. And that's what gives you that like traditional looking crisp is the panko breadcrumbs. And then you get about 1/2 inch of oil, and you just fry it on both sides for about 2 or 3 minutes. You end up with really crispy chicken. And the egg kind of covers in all the gaps and gives you that really delicious thing. So then I just had to plate dinner. This is something I always keep in my fridge. This particular thing. I slice cucumbers with a mandolin, usually fairly chunky, but not like too chunky. And then I basically make a pickling sauce with vinegar, sometimes like rice vinegar or rice wine, soy sauce, of course, chili crisp, sesame oil, sesames, salt and pepper, decent bit of salt, decent bit of vinegar. Don't put too much vinegar though. You basically want a chili flavor, and the vinegar's there to kind of like pickle them a bit and give you that texture. Obviously have kimchi. I have a jar of kimchi in the fridge. I'm eating it all the time. We have my lovely chicken. Then we have some curry sauce, and that is the final plate. Bit of kimchi, bit of pickled cucumbers in chili crisp, and then a fantastic curry sauce and katsu. that was the other dish, and I have another 3 portions of that in the fridge to eat this week. So yeah, that's just how I'm finishing up. I mean, if you like the cooking section, my plan is basically just to add a bit more color and sort of watch to my videos by putting cooking on in the background when I'm talking about Fab. So I have a bit more like eye candy in the back when I'm talking about Fab. And then I can also show you what I'm cooking and talk about it a little bit, because that is a huge part of my life that I feel like you guys probably aren't as aware of as you could be. I absolutely adore food. I know I was using I call it the crappy knife I keep in the kitchen. Today, I'd still keep it very sharp, so it is quite good. But, I have very good knives, chopping boards, pots and pans. I have slow cookers, rice cookers, I have everything, basically, to cook whatever I want. And my cupboard is basically a Japanese pantry, because obviously, being allergic to tomatoes, I go to Asian cooking pretty much non-stop, right? They don't use a lot of tomatoes in most of their dishes. I can eat almost whatever I want, and it's actually just fantastic. So you'll see me in Asian cooking constantly. I'm making, soup sauces, stuff like this. I make a lot of things like sambeiji. I've even made xiangbing. Is it xianbing? I don't know. I always get the tones wrong on that, which is like these Japanese meat-filled pancakes, street buns or whatever they're called. I've made scallion pancakes. I've made a load of Japanese and Chinese food. Tianbing, did I say it was Japanese? That's Chinese, right? So I've made a load of Chinese food. I made a load of Korean food. I make a load of Szechuan food. I basically have a giant sack of chilies and Szechuan peppercorns downstairs. So yeah, it's my goal to start just using attractive cooking videos as the background for my talk, so people have something visual to watch while I'm doing these Fab videos. And if that is an intersection of the world that you find interesting, cooking, Fab, and cards, then yeah, come to my channel and we'll keep doing interesting stuff, because I'm doing it, so I'm going to talk about it. That's it. That's the episode for this week, so have a good one, and I will talk to you all soon.